We close, we close, we close it in. We close it in. We close it in. I say once again, I'm yelling, repent to the masses. Spirit war, let's begin. If it's beef, I'ma spin. I'm really feeling like Mike Jackson. Fake friends don't pretend, but I'm yelling out cut, cause they really ain't about that action. Most High told me I'm the captain, so I make waves like I brought my stuff in. I'm reading
erased or painted as violent uprisings, and you know how they call John Brown crazy, right? The whole reason for making John Brown insane is to invalidate his righteous cause against slavery. These people were responsible for all of that. The Ku Klux Klan was glorified as protectors of Southern womanhood. Publishers of textbooks, they all complied. They all colluded to sell these books in Southern markets. So the history of the Old South was a 1950 textbook that was taught in Mississippi schools that claimed, quote, most slaveholders treated their slaves kindly. Many slaves did not want freedom. This is literally the kind of stuff that when I went to school for middle school in my little tiny town of Jarrett, Virginia, 90 miles south of Richmond, this is the kind of stuff that was in our textbooks about slavery. And then Jim Crow schools and black miseducation. Under segregation, oh, you don't think they left us out, did you? They didn't. They covered all the bases. Under segregation, black schools, where they did exist, were underfunded and forced to use white-approved textbooks. Southern states banned black history from being taught in black schools and punished the teachers who taught it. Black children were taught in black schools that slavery wasn't that bad. Y'all still here, ain't you? Couldn't have been that bad. And that they were taught that Reconstruction failed because black people were unfit to govern. Not that Reconstruction was violently destroyed, that white people murdered black and white Reconstruction elected officials and destroyed Reconstruction governments and the progressive Reconstruction constitutions and the policies they enacted that even provided for uplifting poor white farmers. And they did all this to get us to accept racial hierarchy, where they did that by convincing us that vocational training is more important to people like us than political education. And this is why pushing for trade schools with no focus on providing a real, complete, and honest historical education that impacts everything else is a problem. So I've just given you a little tiny bit of the history behind the weaponization of education that did not start with the punishment of these college students who have been protesting genocide. No, the weaponization of education and the denial of facts has been a long-standing aspect of this country and the telling of this country's history by the people who created it. And they're telling the people who were the victims, the targets in this history, that we're the ones who are dwelling on the past and we need to stop and we need to move forward, while they lie about what their ancestors did to our ancestors that they know full well our ancestors' descendants, us, we are still having to deal with. That's why they don't want you to know these things. That's what all this stuff about anti-CRT, anti-woke, divisive ideology, it's not about anything other than continuing this history of convincing everyone that this government and this system didn't do anything that they haven't corrected. So whatever problems you have now, it's your fault, and you can't hold a government that fixed things or a society that fixed this accountable for what they fixed. What they're lying about is that they ever fixed any of it. They didn't. I'm out of time. $70 to go. Thank you so much, Michael Thomas. $70 to go. Even though I'm out of time, you can still call, you can still give a donation, you can still support. 202-588-9739, 1-800-222-9739. Luta continua, the struggle continues. But if we stick with this history and if we stick with this struggle, Victoria Acerta, victory is certain. Peace. Stay tuned, y'all. Got a little bit extra for you on YouTube.
Malcolm Lives, an event of spoken word commemorating Malcolm X's 100th birthday and paying tribute to the last poets, happening Wednesday, May 14th at the Black Cat, 1811 14th Street.
In celebration of the life and legacy of activist and composer Bernice Johnson Reagan, Wise Reagan Arts and Strathmore presents Over My Head, I Hear Music in the Air, a night of song, poetry, and reflection, featuring Toshi Reagan with special guests Liz Wright, Alexis Pauline Gumbs, original members of the Freedom Singers, and more. Friday, May 16th at the Strathmore. Information at strathmore.org.
National Reparations Rally, Saturday, May 17th, a festival of unity and celebration of the ongoing quest for reparations, as well as the 100th anniversary of the birth of Malcolm X. Speakers include Tony Browder, Robert Ruth Simmons, Amalia Shitala, Adwa Ayatoro, and Ayo Handy Kindi, with virtual remarks from Maulana Karenga, actress Erica Alexander, and Ben Chavis. Performers include Raz Cass, along with DC's own Ayanna Gregory, Afi Soul, Lucy Murphy, Free Ben Jamin, Nana Malaya, Randy Payton, and Laini Mataka. May 17th.
Hey, all right. Peace. And I know I usually come in on the morning tip, when we do Spirit Talk news, but we in the afternoon time, so I'm going to say good afternoon, brothers and sisters, and all praise to the Most High God, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Happy Friday! Yes, sir. It's actually 6 p.m. and it's Friday. So it's actually the 6th day of the week, brothers and sisters. That means this is the prep day for God's beautiful, blessed, and holy Sabbath day, brothers and sisters. And when the sun goes down, it will be God's beautiful, blessed, and holy Sabbath. That is the 7th day of the week. That is the day you're supposed to rest and go to church. Now, with that being said, if you want to find a Sabbath class near you, because you should be looking for a Sabbath class, because that's how you're going to find the truth. And I'm talking about through God's chosen people, who are the Israelites, the real Jews, the Hebrews. Like Jesus was an Israelite from the tribe of Judah, right? Paul was an Israelite from the tribe of Benjamin, King David from the tribe of Judah, Moses from the tribe of Levi, and the list goes on and on and on, right? Well, that is God's true church. God's true church started with Israel in the wilderness. You can read that in Acts 7. Okay, so nothing changed in Acts 2. On the Feast of Pentecost. It wasn't transferred over to the Gentiles. When you go and read that, you'll see that those were devout Jews from different regions meeting to keep God's holy Feast of Pentecost. And you should ask yourself, how come today's Christianity isn't doing that? How come they're not doing what you read in the New Testament under the New Covenant? How come they're not keeping the Sabbath like the Israelites and early Christians were doing in the book of Acts? Keeping the dietary law like they were in the book of Acts. Keeping the feast days like they were in the book of Acts, brothers and sisters. I'll tell you why. It's because today's religion is a show. It's one big act. It's a false act. Okay, that's why. But without further ado, we're going to get into this program and what we just heard, which was pretty profound if you ask me, right? But before we get into that, just know that if you are looking for a true church, you can go to icoj7.com. That's icoj7.com, and you can find a real true church near you, brothers and sisters. We are located in almost every major city across the U.S. and expanding. That is icoj7.com, Israel, the Church of Jesus. And in Spirit Talk News, this is independent, but we are still representing, we are still representatives, we are still members of Israel, the Church of Jesus, brothers and sisters. And that is the foundation of our understanding, even when we give you some insight on Spirit Talk News and Spirit Talk Mini, right? Our foundation is our church, and our church is Israel, the Church of Jesus. So what does Israel, the Church of Jesus, have to deal with the weaponization of education and the dismantling of truth through the powers that be, through the white supremacists, right, who orchestrate the narrative of civil society as it relates to understanding education, race relations, slavery, and the history of America. What does Israel, the Church of Jesus, have to do with that? What does the fact that these same powers that be, right, which have, as we heard earlier on the program, which have blatantly mistold history, have provided a miseducation of history, right? Like you got the miseducation of the Negro, and that's where, Lauryn Hill got the miseducation of Lauryn Hill, right? Because that book was by Carter G. Woodson, who you can see a statue of him, right? A memorial of him here in DC on Rhode Island Avenue in the city, right? But Carter G. Woodson was also the founder of Black History Month, right? He's the father of Black history, right? And he wrote Miseducation of the Negro, brothers and sisters. He wrote Miseducation of the Negro, and that was published back in the 30s, back in 1933, right? And that was his thesis that stated that, black folks who are the true Hebrews were being culturally indoctrinated rather than taught in American schools, right? So how is it that that same agenda is taking place today? And what does that have to do with Israel, the Church of Jesus? What does that have to do with God's true chosen people? It has everything to do with it, brothers and sisters. Because we, as God's chosen people, need to realize that we are experiencing generational disenfranchisement, generational oppression, generational racism, not because we are less than, not because we are, 3/5 of a man, of a, not that because we are, incapable of rising and coming together, not because we are racially inferior, Because these are the things that you will hear. This has been the ongoing rhetoric, right? Not because we're savages and uncultured, right? Rather, it's because we do not actually realize our true culture and our true heritage. We have been removed from it. We've been stripped from it. And the reason we have been stripped from it is because we are in fact God's chosen people. The Bible spells that out very clearly from Genesis to Revelation. And because we have broken God's covenant and commandments, God put some semi-permanent consequences on our nation as a form of punishment, which included losing our identity, our heritage, and being casted and carted out into the four corners of the earth into global slavery and oppression by way of slave ships. You may know that as the slave trade. You have the trans-Saharan slave trade. You have the transatlantic slave trade, right? You might know it as the triangular trade. You might know it or being referenced as the Middle Passage, and how we got here on devastating conditions through crossing the Atlantic on ships of bondage, in captivity, shackled, dismembered, raped, pillaged, stripped, and divided from our families. Right? Why did that happen? And how do we know that this is related to the God of the creation, the God of the Bible? Because the God of the Bible told us specifically in the book of Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28 that these things, these conditions will befall on our entire nation. And once we would get to our slave camps, so let's just make it easy and say North and South America for those that are in the Americas, because that's where we are. Once we would get there, he told us what our condition would be. He told us we would get sold as male and female slaves. He told us we would work plantations and not reap the benefits. He told us that they would take our mule. So much for 40 acres and a mule, when the Bible told you that your ass was going to get violently taken away and it wasn't going to be restored. He told us that we were going to be treated as less than, whether we were in the field in the south or in the city up north. We all know about the Great Migration in American history, where we tried to escape the devastating circumstances of chattel slavery, thinking that we would find a better life, right? Moving up north with better opportunities once we were free. But that's not what we found, brothers and sisters. We found more agendas of oppression, right? The Lord even told us that we would be hidden in prison houses. So that accounts for your mass incarceration. He told us that our houses would be primarily ran by women because the men would be incarcerated or killed, or they would leave the household and not take care of their families. He told you that the inner city conditions of what you see, poverty, right? Sickness. If you look at the CDC statistics by way of nationality, and you look at who is suffering the most, encountering the most diseases and plagues and deficiencies, right? Who's suffering the worst health conditions in this country? It has always been us. The Lord told you about sickness and how it was going to plague us in our lands of captivity. And this is the same condition that we find ourselves faced in all over the world, where we have to march. The Lord tells you about marching and how marching wasn't going to help us. And he told you that our enemies will rule over us just like in Egypt until he returns to set us free like he did during the Exodus. We are waiting on Exodus part 2. That is the only way we're going to get out of this condition, brothers and sisters. So it has everything to do with who we are as a people. The conditions that we discussed earlier in the program through the sister who was breaking down the weaponization of education, right? And how there has been a conspiracy, so to speak, to convolute and destroy the factual history of race relations in this country as it pertains to the Negro, right? No different from what Carter G. Woodson wrote in his book in 1933 that he published, The Miseducation of the Negro. No different. The same circumstances, right? The same issues. The same problems, brothers and sisters. So why is that? How is that? Well, it's because, hold on. It's because brothers and sisters, God is the one who told us these things were going to happen. So with that being said, he even told us that the nations were going to band together, specifically the Europeans, right? We're going to band together and do this, right? Because they are the ones that have control over our slavery. We are under the rulership of the Europeans, brothers and sisters. But they are not the only ones, right? They have worked with other nations, including the fake Jews in Revelation 2:9. The Bible tells us about the fake Jews, right? In Hosea 8, he tells us about our condition under the Gentiles. In Luke 21, he tells us that they would have the control over us, right? So let's go ahead and read a couple things, read a couple scriptures to make that point crystal clear for you. And then we will let you go. Okay? We will let you go. So let's take a look. I mentioned Luke 21. Well, let's go there. Luke 21 and 24. So this is how we got transported. I'm going to read two places. Luke 21 and 24 and Deuteronomy 28:68. You're going to see our condition and how we got transported all throughout the world into slavery. And yes, we are reading the book of Luke, the words of Jesus, because Jesus was the God of the Old Testament who foretold this to Moses to begin with, right? So what did he say? This is why Jesus wept. This is why Jesus tried to gather the lost sheep, and we're still lost. See, the reason why you're seeing churches pop up and people pop up and groups pop up with Israelite claiming to be real Jews, right? From Kanye West to Kyrie Irving, right? To Kendrick Lamar, right? To Kodak Black, right? Going back to Lauryn Hill, right? KRS-One, Desmond Decker in Jamaica with the song Israelites. The reason why you have, even you hear people like Candace Owens, and you hear different rabbis, from Israeli rabbis, right? The Jewish people. You even have them telling you. You have different scholars. You have different books being published. Books like From Babylon to Timbuktu, right? You have all these different movements, and you see all these different people telling you who the real Jews are. You got the Igbo people in Nigeria. You got the Limba in South Africa, right? You got the Falasha in Ethiopia. You got all these different groups. Telling you because prophecy is taking place, brothers and sisters. So we have to understand there's always been an agenda not to just subvert black history as it pertains to America, but it's a bigger, more destructive conspiracy to hide the fact that we are the true Jews. Because when we realize what really took place and we know who we are, that proves that the Bible is 100% true, and the devil and all people influenced by the devil, especially the powers that be, do not want that. Because when we wake up and when we start to organize as God's chosen people, that is the beginning of the end of the world rulership as we know it. And the devil does not want that, you see, but he cannot stop that. So let's read these two places, and we'll probably read about 4 scriptures, and we'll let you go. All right. So it says, Luke 21:24, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. Talking about the Hebrews, the real Jews, the Israelites. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles. Who are the Gentiles? They are who you know as the seed of Japheth, the Europeans, brothers and sisters, the Romans, the Germans, the English, the Spanish, the Portuguese, right? I said the Romans, but that means the Italians, right? All the people responsible for the slave trade under the transatlantic slave trade from the 1400s onwards, brothers and sisters. Those are your Gentiles. And it says again, let's read it from the top. It says, and they, talking about the Israelites, the Jews, the Hebrews, right? They shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. So this was talking about in 70 AD when Titus besieged Jerusalem. And that was the beginning of the end of us being in our land. And soon after, once we migrated into the interior of Africa, we were susceptible to being led away captive into slavery by way of the slave trade during the rise of that actual trade that took place with Portugal and Spain, and coming to, having black Africans sell Hebrews to Europeans for their New World occupation, which was decreed by the Pope, brothers and sisters, in the 1400s. So that's how we were led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem, right, our homeland, where we've been taken from, because we went from Jerusalem to being led away captive into all nations. It said, shall be trodden down. Our homeland is occupied of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. That means until the time of white supremacy is fulfilled. So God knows about white supremacy. He called it. Brothers and sisters, white supremacy will not be fulfilled until the Lord returns. So let's go to Deuteronomy 28 and tell you and show you exactly how that happened. How did we get led away captive into all nations? Into captivity. Because God told you that would happen to his people, right? Even Jesus. So Jesus knew about the slave trade. He is concerned about slavery. Yes, because we are his chosen people. And just like we were slaves in Egypt, he told us that we were going to go into worldwide captivity, and he was going to call it Egypt all over again, because Egypt was our first bondage. That's why we were crying in Egypt, and God heard our cry. That's why he sent Moses to let our people go from the hard bondage. You know about the brick and mortar. You've seen the stories. You've seen the movies. You looked on the walls of Egypt. You know what took place, brothers and sisters. So this is what it says that will happen in the future after we were delivered from Egypt. The Lord said if we were to break his covenant, that we would go into bondage all over again. Right? It says right here in verse 68 of Deuteronomy 28, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. Talking about Jerusalem, that's trodden down by the Gentiles. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, brothers and sisters. And no man shall buy you, meaning no African that sold you, or no Gentile that sold you, that cross sold you, or that bought you. No, none of them are going to sell you back into freedom. They're not going to buy you back from which you were sold, right? The people who sold you, those Africans, they're not buying you back. And no man's going to save you from this predicament. You're going to have to wait on the Lord until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And how did you go? Like the Lord said, led away captive by way of ships. And where did the Lord say you will be led away captive? Into all nations. This is the same thing you read in Deuteronomy 28. The same thing. So we're going to go to Psalm 83 and show you this whole premise of how and why our history has been convoluted, why it's been destroyed, why people, why they have agendas in place to continuously destroy our history and whitewash it and retell it, try to reimagine it, try to skew it. Why do they do all these things? Because ultimately what they're hiding is that we are God's chosen people, and this is a global agenda from the powers that be. So let's read this, and this will actually be our last place. And if you want more information, all you got to do is go to ICOJ7.com. Go check us out, Israel, the Church of Jesus, DMV. But if you want more of these programs, these, shows, all you got to do is go to Spirit Talk 712 on Facebook and YouTube, right? And watch our Sabbath class lessons, right? Go check out linesandprecepts.com as well, brothers and sisters. You can find out this information for yourself. That is not a joke. So let's show you how the nations have all been in cahoots for this great conspiracy, the greatest conspiracy of all time when it concerns a people's identity. This is what it says in Psalm 83. It says, keep not thou silence, O God, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God, for lo, thy enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head, and they have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. You see that? That's what the nations have done. What have they done? They have said, verse 4, they have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel be no more in remembrance. Verse 5, for they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. And who have done it? Who's at the top of the list? The tabernacles of Edom and Ishmael. That means the Gentiles are working with the fake Jews and the Arabs to hide the fact that we, the Negroes, are indeed the true children of Israel. And then to make it even worse, what if these Ishmaelites, the Arabs and Edomites, the fake Jews, the Israelis done? In verse 12, if you skip down, it says, who said, let us take to ourselves the houses of God in possession. And that's why you have the beef with Israel and Palestine, the ongoing conflict to this day, brothers and sisters. And that is why it is important to know our history. Again, linesandprecepts.com, ICOJ7.com to find a church Sabbath class near you. Spirit Talk 712 to find out more programs like this. Linesandprecepts.com for truth seekers looking for resources, books, history, documentaries, lessons, articles, all on the information that we're talking about today and much, much more. So with that being said, brothers and sisters, I wish you a blessed and happy Sabbath. I hope that you have a great rest of your Friday, and we are going to take you home with a song. And let's see, I'm going to look for the song Lost Sheep by Eshawn Burgundy. I think that's a good fitting track to play to end us out on this segment of Spirit Talk News. Da 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 da. That's Spirit Talk. Alright, so we're gonna take you home with Eshawn Burgundy, brothers and sisters. Let's go. This is called Lost Sheep. Let's get it. All praise to the Most High. Let's go, brothers and sisters. Hey!
Shalom, my brothers, my sisters. The Father woke us up while we were still statistics. They say we might go ballistic, throw us in the district. They treat us animalistic, the bias is simplistic. Handcuffs next to the rollie, round our flashy wrists. Ain't no Ruach HaKodesh when they come to convict us. Honor the Father and the Son, never no soul Invictus. Top of the day, stroking my beard, combing through the scriptures for a witness. Me and my homie might be from the homie. Kingdom of Jews, Queen Zinga had probably sold me. Studied to show myself approved, is proving lies they told me. Things we learned in Egypt, following that godly edicts. All CNI on the back of that dollar, that's a fetus. That's a demon he brought us back from, and now we even. Martin and Malcolm could have never saved us. The Messiah coming back for the house of Jacob. What? From the tap, drinking out our hand, poisoning our food. Gotta cut up olive for our skin. He said that shall not have any other gods. Oh, but of course the true and living can't be Hellenized. The Messiah spoke Hebrew to the Greeks, and without him the Most High God cannot speak. Why? Cause he the word. Passover roasted with bitter herbs. Heavenly host, the sun is shining upon the earth. I see you and me in recovery from a curse. No more poverty, dollars used to get worshipped on the first. Hating our blood for our own kind. From the mud, our sandwiches filled with cold swine. Tree on my Timbs hung my ancestors' bottom line. Freemasonry babies, hand gestures are not my sign. My code of conduct, your honor wrote it on sapphire. His redemption like a pension for the backslider. Who repent ain't walking in the image of Messiah. The world you say he love, he coming to set it on fire.
Everything's everything when you seek what's heavenly. Wait in the water, wait. 'Cause everything's everything when you seek what's heavenly. Wait in the water, riding the wave. In the water, realizing the babies, sheep to the slaughter, slaughter. Whoa, whoa. Wait in the water, in the water. Wait in the water.